Welcome back, everybody, to the RacePlazaMedia podcast, episode 18.
Oh.
So we've been doing this for 18 consecutive weeks.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about the spa race of the F1 Grand Prix. No.
Yeah, of the F1 season.
Exactly. So this weekend was a sprint race.
Yes.
I did not watch the sprint race. So would you like to tell me about it?
You didn't miss much.
That's exactly why I was like, you know what? I'm not interested.
Yeah. So I ended up watching the sprint race, and really not that much happened, which kind of, I felt like I was worried that it would set the tone for the weekend. I'm not a big sprint person anyways in Formula One.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think it adds much to it, the format that it is right now.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they're going to continue to develop the idea, since it's more or less new, at least in the time span of Formula One.
I think it's almost interesting. Like I'm curious who decides which track they're doing a sprint race at, because while I think Spa is a really, really awesome track,
Yeah.
I think right now it's just not. It's tough.
Yeah, it was. So I mean, let's just get into it. So we started off, really the big thing, I guess, that happened was with the starting grid at the front was we had Oscar Piastri in front row with Max Verstappen. Behind them was Norris and Leclerc. Then really great qualifying for a sprint race was Ocon in fifth.
Wow, that's
Sainz
really
in
strong.
sixth. I mean, so that was really, really nice. Then we had Ollie Behrman and Gasly, Hadjar and Bortoleto, just so the top 10.
I think big upset was obviously Lewis qualifying really terribly.
Yeah,
For
Lewis,
both races.
exactly. Lewis was
unfortunately.
in 18th for the sprint race, and then Colapinto was also all the way in the back. And then when the sprint race started, Gasly wasn't on the grid because there was an oil leak. So there was, even as the race had started, he was out of the car, or as the countdown was going. So we were like, oh, he's not going to start the race. He ended up joining, but when he joined, he was already like 2 laps down.
I think probably they let him run for data purposes to maybe
Of
prepare
course.
for the main
Yeah,
race.
that makes sense. And also to make
qualifying
sure
is afterwards, right?
Exactly. So to make sure that the car is ready to go for qualifying. So it makes sense. So the big thing really that happened, the race started, the sprint race, it was 15 laps because it's a really long track. So the race started, and then they go up En Rouge or around En Rouge. And then after the Camel Straight, I think it's called, is this really famous straight that they have there. They go into the turn, and that was really the turn of the track, because that's where most of the action happened.
This is after the DRS zone.
Exactly. And then Max immediately was able to pass Piastri, and that was it, really. I mean, Leclerc was able to pass Norris at that point too. However, a couple laps later, Norris was able to take back his position, and he started gaining time on Piastri, but there was really nothing much more that happened, because Piastri was always in DRS of Max, but he never had enough pace to pass him, just because the Red Bull was really fast on the straights. And there was just certain sectors that he was stronger. There was other sectors and moments that Piastri was stronger. So it was like a constant back and forth, but there was never enough really for Piastri to really have enough momentum or speed to pass Max, which was a bummer, because then that was really the race. I mean, there was
Do
action.
you remember how many laps?
15 laps.
15 laps.
Yes. So it was like, I mean, there's obviously a little bit of action in the back, but it was just not that interesting. I thought, which is just such
And
a
it
bummer.
was dry?
Yes, it was a dry, sunny race. And they all, of course, no pit stops, because you don't usually do that for a sprint race. So it was not much that happened, which is such a bummer, just because it is a track, you know, and we always talk about it, that we want more tracks, and tracks can be more exciting, but with the Spa, it's just, with the car the way it currently is, there's not that many overtaking opportunities. It did change a little bit in the main race. But yeah, so the sprint race was meh.
Because we're also in the era of like dirty air, where dirty air affects the car so much
Yeah.
that even if you have some type of DRS, you might not be able to overtake.
Yeah.
Which is so unfortunate because Spa is such a fantastic track
Yes.
that if you watch it really in any other category, if you watch it in the WEC or any type of GT racing, it is so much fun to
Yeah.
watch. And it's so unfortunate that in the era that we're in at F1, that it's just it like we don't get to see really the cool stuff about it, because
Yeah.
I think there's more than just one overtaking opportunity.
Yes, I mean, we did see it during the main race. And we'll get to that in a second. There was specifically one person who did a lot of overtakes also in different areas of the track that are not quite as common currently, or at least for F1 cars. So, but yeah, it's just a little bit of a bummer just because, I mean, Spa is just such a famous track.
Before we get into the main race, can you tell us about the Pirelli thing that's happening this weekend?
Well, so basically they decided to do a little gap in terms of tire compounds.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, I might get the tires wrong, but essentially they had the hard tire compound, so the white ring tire. I think it was C1, and then C2 they left, so they didn't bring C2, and then they had C3 was the medium, and then C4 was the soft tire, and of course the intermediate and wet tires they obviously brought as well. But basically, the idea was that teams will not opt to go on the hard tire, so that we would have potentially a 2-stop race to make it more interesting in that way, which didn't happen in that way.
I mean, let's get right into the main race. So starting grid, I think the big upset was again Lewis not making it out of Q1 due to a deleted time, which is unfortunate.
Due to track limits.
Yeah, track limits. That's how you get your time deleted in qualifying. Very unfortunate. I didn't watch qualifying just because I had seen a spoiler, so I knew who was P1. So I was like, I'm just not gonna bother with it.
Yeah, I only half watched it, so I don't have too much to say about it. But I mean, we can talk through the grid quickly. So we had. Which was a really close battle at the end. So it was really between which of the McLarens is going to take P1, because they clearly did a front row lockout. Norris ended up taking it at the end, because during Piastri's last lap, he had just made a tiny little mistake that just cost him a little bit, so it didn't work out for him.
If we're looking at the time, like Lando did a 140.562, whereas Oscar did a 140.647, so they were less than a tenth apart.
Yeah.
So this is how like minute it was.
It is.
And how like you just have to essentially drive the perfect lap
exactly
in order to get P1. Then in P3 we had Charles Leclerc,
which is
Ferrari.
really exciting to see that he was up in so in the second row next to Max Verstappen, which the Red Bull, I think they made some changes to the car because Silverstone, of course, didn't go quite well for them.
Silverstone, I think this time you also could see that they went in with a different mindset, because in Silverstone the car was set up for a dry race, and this time around we knew there might be a weather situation, and so this time around it wasn't like a fully dry setup, and I think that definitely benefited.
Yes, and this was also the first weekend where we didn't have Christian Horner with the Red Bulls, which is a big...
even talk about that. We'll get into that in just a second.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that was the first big weekend. But great thing, Albon being in fifth. I mean, how beautiful to see the Williams up there ahead of the Mercedes. Then also really big, I thought, great performance from Yuki Tsunoda coming in seventh for qualifying. Isaac Hadjar, was great to see him back in Q3 as well, with Liam Lawson, so both teammates back to back. And then rounding out the top 10 was Gabriel Bortoleto, which is also, of course, great that he made it into Q3.
And then it is very interesting. We had Lewis starting in 18th, Kimi starting in 19th, and then Fernando Alonso starting in 20th. So it's also like drivers that obviously usually like to frequent the top 10 or Q3. Starting all the way from the back row. Very, very interesting. I will say very excited that Albon started in P5.
Yes.
very unfortunate that Carlos seems to have like the opposite experience. He didn't even make it out of Q1.
Yes.
Starting in 17th. So,
But then it was almost flipped during the sprint because Carlos ended up coming in 6th in the sprint and Albon came in 16th. So you know how it's like the tables turned a little
Yeah.
bit. I mean, it just really depends on the qualifying. And like we've been saying all season, the times are so incredibly close. So it's just every mistake counts
Yeah,
or
every
hurts
little
you just
twitch
so
you'll do.
much. Yeah.
So let's get into the race. So the race, I will already say, what a huge bummer. The race started off and then it was immediate red flags because of the rain
I feel so bad for everybody
that
who
attended.
watched it, like to attended one and then who got up early
Yes.
to watch it live, especially here in the US. I think here in California, the start time was like 6 a.m. or something. So I feel so bad for everybody who got up that early. We watched it much later with our group of friends. None of us, or just one person had spoilers. Everybody else was able to avoid it.
I was just not on my phone in the
Yes.
morning. I was just like, forget about it.
No social media, no YouTube, no nothing.
No, nothing. Yeah. Stay off your phone.
But yeah, so I feel bad for everybody who watched it live because I think it was delayed by like 50 plus minutes.
Yeah.
Which is, it is a long time. But you also saw, because they did do an outlap with the safety car and like the spray was really, really intense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this really goes down to that. Unfortunately, there's an issue with I'm not quite certain what it is, but no one is using the wet tire because apparently it's not viable. And that's why we don't have wet or rain races.
Yeah.
Because by the time the race restarted,
Yes.
it was not raining anymore.
Yeah.
Or it was like maybe like a tiny bit. So and that also resulted in, like, spoiler alert, but it has resulted in a really boring race.
Yeah, it was.
Because
Yeah.
they didn't restart the race until it was almost in. Like, of course, as a viewer, it didn't seem like it was like outrageously a lot of rain.
Yes.
It was just raining, and I get that.
I mean, the track was partially still wet.
It was, yes. But I'm just like Silverstone was a really exciting race because they let people race in the rain and it wasn't even that much. But it's like we clearly have an issue why no one wants to do the wet tire. So the race gets red flagged and then we have a safety car start and then we did a rolling start.
Yeah.
So they did 4 laps behind the safety car, which I thought was quite a lot.
I
thought they could have started the race a lap earlier.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like drivers on the grid also said that. And I think what also the issue is with the safety cars, because Spa is such a long track that it, like when it didn't come in after the 3rd lap, I was like, yo, are we doing another lap behind the
I mean, because like a qualifying lap, qualifying time is like 1 minute and 40 and some change, like we had said. So imagine an outlap with a safety car is significantly longer. So it's a lot of time that you're wasting. But I also want to say, like, I agree with you that
4.3 miles or 7 kilometers long is Spa.
Gotcha. But what I was going to say, my point was, like, I understand that they can race obviously during the rain or on the intermediate tires when it's like a certain surface. But I am in favor of being a little bit more cautioned, especially at Spa. Just because of the history at Spa.
Yeah,
you know?
I get that.
So that's why I'm like, I rather, like, I understand your thinking. And obviously they're all excellent athletes. They're top tier drivers. That's why they're in Formula One. And they can race those cars in the rain. And I think it's a combination of like, let's figure out whatever issue is with the wet tires so they can actually race during the rain. But then I rather have them be safe, especially in Spa, just because we have such a bad history in Spa.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't want anyone to get injured or anything like that. But I think, was it a Monaco 2 years ago where it was red flagged? And I was like, okay, this seems like a lot of rain.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. It just didn't seem like it to me this time around. I get that we skipped it because we were rewatching it, obviously, so I'm not going to sit through the hour of red flag. But it's just like, it's like now we're just waiting for the weather to get good.
Well, I would say like maybe they could have started earlier, you know, because it seemed like it wasn't raining. It was just a really wet track. So I think there could have been like a little bit of a medium ground that could have been found.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. They started later. The race started. They did a rolling start.
Which obviously favored the pole position holder Norris, because obviously if you get to pick the race restart,
Yes.
it can be a little bit more beneficial. In Spa, it is you come from that last hair needle down the straight, and essentially already at the beginning of the lap, we knew the safety car was coming in because it had turned off the lights. So it was a very different situation compared to what we had in Silverstone.
Yes.
Also, no potential really for Lando to get a penalty, which
Like Oscar did.
which Oscar undeservedly got. So which I liked. I was like, hey, indicate right off the get-go.
Yes.
I thought it was a lap too late, but then I thought Lando did he had a decent restart or start to the race, but then going around that first right-hander and then that shootout down to En Rouge, Oscar just really got into his slipstream.
I mean, it was insane how close Oscar got. I thought it was
thought
incredibly
they almost touched.
brave. Yeah, because it was really so close. And I mean, of course, the speeds that they go is insane.
And he got so close. This was after En Rouge when you get into the Camel Straight. Exactly, going like that's that track down to that left hand corner that you have. I almost thought when he made that overtake, it felt like his wing was about to or almost touched Lando's rear, but then he didn't. He made that move around and then he passed Lando. And that was really his move.
Yes.
And I think that was also the only time he would have had been able to take P1. It's like if he didn't do it then I think it would have been harder and harder to make that overtake.
I mean, he did it exactly the same spot also that Max did it the day before.
I'm sure he looked at the footage.
Yes. And then that's really the spot that he had to do. I thought it was really brave and he pushed it like immediately. But like you said, he had to do it then because any lap later, it would have just get more and more difficult.
Correct.
Because he had the lead. He drove out a little bit of a lead. And then the big question was, when are they, because everybody was on intermediates at that point. When are the first people going to go in? When is the time to switch to slicks? And then also the question of whether they switched to the mediums or the hard tires. The one person I want to give a big shout out to is
Driver of the day,
of course, one of our favorite, number 44, Lewis Hamilton.
Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Sir Lewis Hamilton started in 18th and ended up in 7th. So he worked his way through the crowd, and he was the one person that I was hinting at prior that did overtakes on other corners than just the one right after Camel Straight.
It's also, I think he did an overtake on one of the Alpines. I cannot remember if it was Colapinto or Gasly. And like you could just see like he had just so much more grip.
Yeah, I think it was Colapinto because it was really early on.
Yeah.
And I think also in that lap, I think the commentator was saying
3.
He did 3 overtakes in a single lap.
Yeah.
I mean, which is really impressive, especially in Spa, in those conditions at that point of the race.
I will say, I said it beforehand, I would have actually honestly been surprised if Lewis would have not made it into the points because I thought he was going to be able to have the pace.
You did call it from the beginning.
I said it from the beginning. I said it before the race. I was like, I think he has the pace to make it into because like the Ferrari is not where we want it to be at. It's not fast enough to beat the McLarens, but it's not like it's a super slow car.
Yeah.
It's not where Ferrari wants it to be at. It's not as a Ferrari fan where you want it to be at, but it's not like it's
Alpine.
It's an or something like that, right? But Lewis absolutely put it down, showed why he's a 7-time world champion, right? Very good in dealing with the difficult track conditions because they were trying to figure out intermediates when you're going to come off of it because they did obviously 4 laps on the under the safety car with it. It was just obviously pouring already deg on it.
Yeah, and then the degradation on the intermediate is usually quite strong.
Especially once it becomes dry, it I've ruined my own races in GT7.
But then also it's like we saw in Silverstone, you can't switch too early because then you spin out, you get off track, and that just hurts you even more. So it was really a waiting game of like who's going to go first. And Lewis was
the first person
to go in, and it worked for him.
And then it created like this
domino effect.
Everyone behind him, and then literally the I would say like the immediate 3 people that were behind him then pitted, and they all took advantage of that pitting 1 lap earlier because you did lose a lot of time on that intermediate tire. And then Lewis made it right up into the top 10.
Yeah.
And I was surprised, I'm going to be honest, how long that, for example, because you had Kimi Antonelli in the back there. And I'm uncertain what happened, why he qualified so bad. I don't know if they did something, changes to the car. I don't know. But I was very surprised that he struggled so much because he finished 16th the race and he didn't seem to at all, because all the rain races I think Kimi actually had done really well. The last race in Silverstone he DNF'd, but because he got hit.
Yes.
And then in Austria he did really, really well. He managed, and I think he finished top 5. I think he finished 5th or 6th. And so I was very surprised to not see him pulling alongside Lewis, but Lewis then made it into the top 10, specifically into 7th, right behind Albon.
Which is nice. I'm so glad that he was able to stick around up there.
But to be honest, once he was behind Albon and he had DRS for like a lap, I was like, oh, he's not going to make that overtake, because it's like we're in this era where just like it's not happening. And it's super unfortunate, because we had a couple of people that were able to get within DRS of other people. We had a little bit of a DRS train of like 2 to 3 people in the back end. But because that first person who has DRS is not able to make the overtake, the other person is not. Eventually, Kimi was able to, I think, make an overtake in a DRS train that he was in, but only one of the 2, I think. And it's a little bit unfortunate.
So it's a little bit of a bummer. It was overall not the most interesting race.
It truly wasn't. If you haven't watched it, I think just check out the highlights. I don't think you
really
need to watch it.
Yeah. So we had Oscar Piastri was able to keep the lead. There was this one question, because when they went into the pits, Oscar went with the mediums.
Everyone went mediums. Besides
and then
Lando,
Norris,
I think,
because he went into the pits several laps later, or
I think 1 lap
just
later.
a lap later. It felt longer because it's such a long track. But he ended
the
up
longest actually of one circuit.
Oh, okay, perfect. So then he ended up getting onto the hards, and then they were immediately telling him like, oh, we're going to see if we can take this to the end. And then we were like, oh, this seems like a long time, because it was over, I think it was at that point, it was like over 20, almost 30 laps, if I'm not mistaken.
And obviously mimicking what Russell did last year with the hard tire and doing the one stop. Russell, of course, being unfortunate, being a little bit underweight and getting disqualified.
Correct.
And then Lewis inheriting the race win, which he was just fucking pissed about it anyways, because like Mercedes was like, why didn't you guys let me know that there was a one stop option? But that was Russell's call. That's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
But I think, honestly, from Lando's perspective, I think going onto the hard, I don't think it was a bad call, because at that time we all thought the medium was going to be a 2-stop, but then they were able to just like drag it out and drag it out.
Which I was already fuming on the inside a little bit. I was like, bro, Piastri's leading the race, and then you give him the tire where you have to stop another time, because then everyone went onto the medium. No, of course, because the thought was maybe there would be another stop. And then they're telling Lando, oh, it might just be a 1 stop, and he's on the hards, which is clearly the tire usually that lasts longer. And then also with like 20 laps to go, they're asking Oscar like, hey, how's it looking? And he's like, oh, well, I am feeling a little bit of deg. I'm not sure if it will last.
To be fair, we also don't know how truthful that is.
Of course,
right?
of course. But then, so I was like, oh my gosh, they gave Norris a better strategy now, although he was the one in second. Of course, it's a different team.
Well, I actually, to be honest, the only reason why I didn't read it like that is because his race engineer asked Lando, it's like, hey, do you want to do the hard tire? And then he was like, yeah, I'll do the hard tire.
Yeah.
Because I think no one expected the medium to last this long.
Yes.
But then everyone kind of just made it last.
Yeah.
And then.
So Oscar was able to take the win. Norris was getting closer a little bit towards the end, but then he made a mistake, and then he lost some time again, and then
I mean, he did. So at the best time, Oscar was up 9 seconds on Lando.
Yes.
And then most of the time he was up like a little bit over 8 seconds. And then Lando started putting the pressure on. I don't know if Lando just started the charge too late, because he ended up cutting down it to 3.4 seconds.
However, I do think that Oscar might have not pushed quite as hard.
Of course not. You want to maintain the tire.
2 laps or so, because there was like 5 seconds for the last 2 laps, and then all of a sudden it's 3.4. I'm
Yeah,
like,
just bring it
I'm
home.
sure he just wanted to bring it home. He didn't have to push it to the limit. And he was also so excited, Oscar, about the win. He saw him like punching the air, and he even cursed on the radio. And I'm sure it's such happy news, especially after Silverstone, which was really frustrating for him because he was unjustly penalized. And then yesterday, of course, the win was taken away from him by Max, which was not wrongdoing.
That one
it was just racing.
Max just making a pass, and that's
Exactly,
fine.
exactly.
But the Silverstone thing was a whole fumble.
Exactly.
by
But
FIA
like, it's
again.
just nice that it had a good weekend. I mean, the McLarens overall had a really good weekend. Lando definitely did need to win both races to make up a lot of time, because in the first race, or in the sprint race, they came in second and third. So there's a little bit of points, or a point lost for Lando. And then now he lost additional points for the overall driver championship.
So I think it's right now 16-point gap between them.
Yes, exactly. So it's double now than it was, I think, coming into it.
I mean, to be fair, we're halfway through the season now, so that means we have 12 more races.
Yes.
So literally anything could still happen.
Yes.
Literally. I mean, between Oscar and Lando, I think Max, who is down, what is it? He's almost down 100 points. He's down 81 points.
Yeah.
I think to Oscar Piastri, that I don't think that will happen.
Like, the car would have to go to shit, and like a lot will have to happen, or Oscar would have to be injured.
Well, I think both McLarens
Yes.
would have to, like, all of a sudden the McLaren doesn't know how to drive anymore.
Exactly.
That's the only way neither of those will win the the drivers championship,
And the
because the
constructor
constructors championship will go to them.
Yeah.
There's, like, if they would fumble that, then I think that would be insane.
Yeah.
Because they have right now in McLaren constructors championship 516, and then in second place Ferrari 248, so less than half.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, they're like, if you fumble this, then you're out.
Yeah.
The good thing is, what makes me a little bit happy is that Ferrari in the constructors championship is 28 points up on Mercedes, so that means they're in second place, which makes me quite happy. I will say the big, really impressive thing, honestly, and this is really Max carrying the team hard, is that Red Bull Racing is only 28 points down from Mercedes, with 220 points for Mercedes and 192 for Red Bull Racing. That's insane. If we're talking about how difficult of a time the second driver in the Red Bull Racing has. So that was first Lawson, obviously, and now Yuki. We talked a little bit about it, that the new team principal, Mackey's, Laurent Mackey's, right? Mankey's or something like that. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'll get it right next time. He had talked about that he wanted Yuki to get upgrades to his car as well, because I think a lot of the upgrades Red Bull was keeping for Max. In a way, I understand if he's the driver that is making the points and also potentially drive the only one who's fighting for the drivers championship. I understand that, because Yuki starts anew, right? Even if he would have scored points in Red Bull Racing, those don't carry over to Red Bull, right? Do they?
Oh, when he scored points for Racing Bulls,
do they carry over?
No,
I don't think so, right? So you're already down 2 races, which makes it difficult. However, the other hand is if your second driver is struggling so much in the car that is famously, apparently, according to everyone who's driving the car, which is or who has driven the car, which is 4 different people now, right? And they're all saying it's very difficult to drive. And then you're not going to give the guy who's already struggling, who's new to the car, you're not going to give him upgrades to potentially make the car a little bit easier. That is a choice.
Yeah, that is a very strong choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, like we said, this was the first weekend without Christian Horner. It felt a little weird seeing Laurent in the race at the Red Bull side. I mean, not weird, because I mean he's such a face around the paddock already, because he was with the Raging Bulls before. But it's just weird not seeing Christian there all of a sudden.
It just seems, it is very odd, because Christian obviously was the one and only team principal that Red Bull had so far. And part of me is like, also feels like, wow, this is really the end of an era.
100%.
Or era?
Era? Yeah,
that's how I would say it. So that is quite obviously we're hopefully moving on to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
It is very interesting to me that they were like, okay, now is the time we're going to choose to cut them, because this is obviously not the first time where Red Bull quote unquote fell from grace, because you had 4 back-to-back season titles with
Max.
Vettel.
Oh, Vettel, sorry, yeah.
But again, with Vettel, we had the same thing with Max's, where we're winning the drivers' championship, but not the constructors' championship, right? Then there was of course, the era of Mercedes. They're winning everything between the two of them, really. Mostly Lewis and then, a little bit of Nico, right? And then we have like Red Bull on the top again. Or had on the top again, right? Very dominantly. Yes. Obviously, Max being out of 23 races, 20 times on the podium. And majority of them
on the top step.
On the top step in the 2023 season. Yeah, because 2022 was a little bit, we had, for a second we thought maybe Ferrari was there with Charles, but then that
ended quickly.
Pretty quickly, because we had the double DNF for the Ferraris at the first race of the season.
Yes.
But yeah,
so I'm curious to see how Red Bull will fare now with the little bit of change in leadership. Will that kind of wrangle things in, or are things just a little bit rotten right now? Not rotten, but like, are they just need to get back into order? Yeah,
and I think also like Red Bull needs to move away from this whole thing about firing people mid-season or giving people 3 seasons. And the same thing with the Racing Bulls, like we talked about this with our friends, right? Gabriel Bortoleto, right? He said himself in an interview that like the team doesn't really have a lot of pressure for him.
Sauber doesn't,
and he's able to just do his thing. And then now look at it, like he's scoring points. This race again, he finished in the points.
Yeah, I mean, he had time to really adjust to the car, learn it, because an F1 is a big step up from an F2 car,
and he didn't have to worry about.
And then there's also tracks that you're not familiar with, because F2 doesn't race on all the F1 tracks. So it's like, it's a big difference. So especially for rookies, or I mean anybody who switches teams, it's a huge difference, because yes, the cars from like a very pedestrian view, they look very similar, but when you get closer and when you look into like more like the technical aspects and the engineering and stuff like that, they're very different. And of course the driving style is different. And then when you race at those high speeds, everything, like every little bit of a difference makes a huge impact on your driving style.
And also, like, if we're looking at it now, like the 2 drivers who have not scored any points this season, as the 2 people who are currently like fighting for their lives, it's Jack, who didn't really properly get a chance in the Alpine, right? But then it also shows like Alpine, right? They were originally between Mick and between Jack, right? And then they did a test drive, right? And then they let Mick drive like during midday, where the track was like significantly hotter, so his lap times were 2 seconds slower. It was like, well, how are you going to make a fair comparison? So that just shows like Alpine is such a fucking shit show on the inside. Franco Colapinto right now
feels so bad for him.
On a just like Jack was for a second, and then Sargent was for Williams last year, is on a race-to-race contract. And like, I'm not saying like, hey, give Colapinto the contract, but it's I do think there comes a security and like a less pressure situation if you're like, hey, listen, you have a contract until the end of the season. And now, like, don't worry about you just having to, like, trying to stay above water in F1. Just, like, now focus on learning and focus on racing. You don't have to worry about any of the other bullshit or politics or anything like that. It's just super unfortunate for all these.
It is super unfortunate.
I mean, I guess that's the name of the game of F1, where it is a Shark Tank, right? It's eat or get eaten, where it is.
Pretty much. I mean, because it should be the top of the top. Because that's really the pinnacle of motorsport. Like,
single-seater,
of single-seater motorsport. Like, there's, I don't think there's a way you can argue that.
No, there isn't.
So, but the good thing is we have another race coming up this weekend. Another track, exactly, in Hungary at the Hungaroring. And
a cool track.
And then we have 2 weeks off before we go to another track in the Netherlands, Zandvoort.
And then after that we have Monza.
Exactly. So we have a couple of tracks.
We have
coming our way.
Then I think 5 or 6 races back to back tracks.
until we get to Baku. That's going
including
to
like
be
Silverstone and
yes,
Spielberg
exactly.
that
And
we
then
did.
Baku is going to be our first street track, but Baku is a good, fun street track.
Yeah, it has a really awesome long straight. And then last
Yes.
year we had that cool drifting moment with is it Charles and was it Oscar?
Oh,
You know,
where
when
yes,
they're coming
yes,
around that
there's like this
corner?
really cool photo moment where they're like identical.
Like they're coming around that left-hander,
Yes.
and then they both have like this little drifting moment. Super awesome.
Yeah. But
It looks really
yeah.
awesome. But yeah, once again, weekend was super mid. When I already heard that the
Sprint race.
was boring, I was concerned.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I think it would have been more exciting race once again if they would have started earlier the race.
Yeah.
If we would have let them race in the rain. And like I know that Silverstone was a little bit messy, but it was a good race.
Yeah.
You know, but this one was just, it wasn't. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see how awesome Spa is.
Yeah.
Because Spa is a really, really cool track where you can have really awesome races. The WEC this year was really awesome
Yeah.
there. It's really fun races. So it is a little bit of a bummer. I am happy that Lewis made up all of those points.
Yeah.
He got driver of the day, well deserved.
Yes, 100%.
I didn't vote, but I would always vote for him no matter what. I don't care about anyone else. Fight me.
But yeah, so we'll see. I'm excited for this weekend's race. Hopefully this weekend will be a little bit more entertaining.
Yes.
We shall see.
Sorry, the last thing I wanted to say, what an awful race Isaac had. Isaac
Yeah.
started in the top 10, and then he just, after that, after coming off of the intermediates, he was just dropping back. Then he went onto the media tire, pit again, and then he was on a hard tire.
Yeah.
And then he's the only driver that actually finished the race with a lap down.
Yeah. He didn't even
Absolutely
get to do the last lap because of that.
Yeah, absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And Isaac has been doing really, really well. I'm hoping that he's able to shake it off and go
Yeah.
back to the Hungaroring and have a really good time.
Same.
Carlos, also really unfortunate. If an 18th place really wasn't able to get anywhere. Do you want to just say the top 10 real quick? Because
Sure.
I don't think we set that.
Yeah, that's very true. So we had Piastri in first, Norris second. Charles made it into third, which was really exciting. Max Verstappen. Then we had George Russell, Alex Albon, Hamilton, Liam Lawson, Bortoletto, and then Gasly.
10 in the number 10.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, I'm excited for this upcoming weekend. I enjoyed watching the race because we watched it with a group of friends
Yeah.
where we can just chat also and also just talk about the sport in general, which I think just community just makes it a little bit more entertaining.
Absolutely. It's almost one of the most fun ways to watch a race.
Yeah, exactly.
The only way it would have been more fun actually if we would have watched it live. I get that there was this red flag moment, but it's always exciting if you're in the moment of the race.
Of course. I think I would have loved to watch Silverstone live
because it was
with
such a
friends.
mess. Yeah.
Because luckily we didn't have any spoilers, so we did enjoy it. I mean,
And
it was
then
still a crazy race,
A
but
kick on the third,
yeah,
right?
I mean
on the
that was
podium.
just still one of my favorite moments of the year for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be back maybe tomorrow because we do know that the women were racing of the World WCR. We haven't had the chance to watch it, so we're gonna try to watch it, and then hopefully on Spotify, you guys will, and on YouTube, you guys will get a Tuesday episode. But we cannot.
Guaranteed at this
Guaranteed,
moment.
just-
So
it
we'll
kinda
try our
depends.
best, and we will. I mean, you'll find out. So just tune in for that. But if not, we'll for sure be back on Thursday with our usual what to watch. So you know what's coming up this weekend. Of course, you know F1 is going to be here. But what else is there that you can watch in terms of motorsport this weekend? Tune in for that on YouTube on Thursday.
And then if you're listening on Spotify,
Yes.
hit that follow, give us please 5 stars, and if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.